Welcome back, everybody. We are here for round 6 of the Bremen Regionals 2022. I myself, as always, am Costa Dimos, joined by the ever so lovely Mr. David Partington. David, we pumped, hyped, and excited for this round 6.
Absolutely, Costa. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, we're in round 6. It's a quick day at the moment, and it's been going real smooth. And we've had some really interesting teams. And I think honestly, going into this, I thought we were going to have a very similar set of teams to we had last week at some of the regionals. But there's already been some meta development, and I'm really excited to see some of the teams that have been coming out, and even more that we haven't even seen yet.
Yeah, no, exactly that. And I think we are going to have a very spicy match coming up as well. We're going to have Nick Schrott, currently 4-1, being introduced right now. Actually, a very relatively new player. So far, Nick has done a great job in being able to have a consistent record. And I think they did really well recently in the Frankfurt internationals, being able to reach a top 16 for themselves. So quite excited to actually see what kind of team Nick's going to be bringing. Whilst on the other hand, we've got Hippolyte Bernard. So definitely no stranger when it comes to achievements, especially on the regional level.
Exactly. Look at those. Leo Regionals top 8, Cologne Regional Champion, Tour Special Event top 8, and the World Championships top 32. And interestingly, I think it was the Cologne Regional Champion in 2019 was where he also won with Shedinja
Yes.
as well, which was a very epic win. That for sure, because not a lot of people were using it at that point. I think it'd fallen off a little bit, and he brought it back in that restricted format that we still have today. So a very decorated regional champion here, and no stranger to Pokemon. So look at the poll, see who you think is going to win. Is it going to be Nick or is it going to be Hippolyte? I don't know about you, Costa, but I think I would go with previous records as usually as a safe bet. But who knows? Nick Schrott has only had very recent recent achievements, so he could be the best player out there right now at the moment. We just don't know. Especially it's what the COVID situation has done to the situation has made people work really hard from home until regionals have come in. So normally when people have gone straight to an event and it's maybe their first time, they haven't really played around much. People who know they want to go, they've been spending loads of time doing the Players' Cup and any other online events, and now they're here on stream with all this amazing experience that we haven't been able to see yet.
No, we haven't. And personally, I am a sucker for underdog tales. So I'm personally no bias. I'm going to be very curious to see what Nick will be able to bring here because, like you said, a player not having as many achievements, I think it's really good to see the potential of what they can actually bring, especially when on form and in this sort of situation where Nick has done incredibly well for himself. And talking about both of our players, we do have the team preview available to us. And over on Nick's side, going to be bringing a very interesting version of the Sun team, a variation that we've been seeing, I believe, earlier on in this format. So quite interesting to see no sort of ringer variation to it. You know, the Gastrodon's been dropped, essentially.
Indeed. So Hippolyte running a very standard team from what we've seen, especially from the French contingent. Whereas on Nick's end, he's been running that Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and the Groudon, which we've also seen quite a bit of too.
Yes.
Especially these two particular teams facing off. So in very similar fashion to Thomas's lead in game 1 of our stream. In round 1, he leads with the Incineroar and that Thundurus, whereas Nick is with his own Incineroar and the Calyrex Shadow. So right from the get-go, we're going to see the interaction of speed tiers between these Incineroars, and it is Hippolyte's Intimidate that does go first.
Yeah, it does go first, and if Hippolyte's team is anything like his French counterparts that we've already seen multiple times on screen, this is not going to be a defiant Thundurus. It is indeed confirmed now to be the Prankster variant. So being able to have access to status type moves with that additional +1 stage priority thanks to the Prankster ability is a really good utility. It's very good in either going for Thunder Waves, being able to halve the speed of opponent's Pokemon if successfully hit upon, right? Whilst also providing that sort of tertiary effect of being able to force any full paralysis going on.
So the Fake Out does come out into Nick's Incineroar, and the Thunder Wave straight into the Calyrex Shadow, which is a really big Thunder Wave to hit into this Pokemon, because now your Zacian is suddenly outspeeding it, and that I think is one of the really key things that is great about Calyrex Shadow. It outspeeds Zacian, which is such an impressive Pokemon. Now it does not, and likely not for the rest of the game either. However, it is able to get an Astral Barrage off, and interestingly, is a two-shot on this Thunderous. And I think because of the unnerve on this Calyrex Shadow Rider, it's likely preventing that Thunderous from eating its Citrus Berry.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the item of choice that we have seen in this specific team variation. So very good thing to point out there, as we're actually going to be seeing turn 2 start off with a full paralysis. Quite unfortunate for Nick's side there. And the Thunderbolt going straight into that slot. So if that Calyrex is carrying that Focus Sash item, it is now broken. And we see the interaction of the Throat Chop going into Nick's Incineroar, maybe wanting to prevent it from going for any sort of parting shot place there.
Yeah, I think so. Hippolyte made an excellent turn there. I think, obviously, unfortunate that Nick did not get his Calyrex off there because Thunderous was probably going down there. That was very much likely an Astral Barrage. However, Hippolyte would have maybe then got a free switch in to say something like the Zacian, which would have maybe liked to come in on here. Sacred Sword looking pretty strong into the Incin, and then you could just finish off the Calyrex too after the chip. So, however, Calyrex is now the one to switch out here, and there you go, there's the Citrus Berry, which is now able to activate on this Thunderous. So it's going to be able to take another Astral Barrage if Calyrex Shadow comes in later.
That's an interesting switch in as well. Really valuing that Calyrex for the mid to end game there from Nick's side at least, and willing to bring in that Groudon. So this may be the reason why, anticipating that Eerie Impulse going into it. Of course, we know that predominantly Groudons run physical offensive moves as opposed to special, so it's not going to be affected from that Eerie Impulse, as we are going to indeed be seeing Hippolyte's Incineroar go for the parting shot into Nick's Incineroar, and now has the opportunity to go for that very free pivot situation and bring in a Pokemon for further momentum, such as Kyogre.
Yeah, so Hippolyte has, at the moment, won the Weather War here, and it's looking really strong too. I think what we've seen in previous interactions is the Kyogres tend to be pretty speedy, especially and usually faster than the Groudons that they are going up against. So Hippolyte's in a really strong position to be able to potentially just go for a Water Spout here and do a huge amount of damage. And this Groudon's probably only safe if it's going to Dynamax or even switch out. So what we still don't know is the Groudon's item yet. It could be that Assault Vest that we've seen. It could be something like a White Herb. It could be something like a Citrus Berry. We still don't know yet, whereas and the Kyogres on this team are predominantly Mystic Water so far. So, but if it is that Assault Vest, it's going to be able to take those Water-type attacks a lot better. And after a Max Quake, even better so. So let's see if Nick brings in his fourth Pokemon that he's got yet. So he's not revealing it just yet. Calyrex Shadow is the switch-in instead for that Groudon.
It's switching, and it seems like Nick is willing to sack, per se, this Calyrex slot in order to be able to bring in that Groudon once more. We actually see the Thunder Wave there. Hippolyte going for the prediction, expecting that fourth unrevealed Pokemon, but my lord, look at that double KO from the Water Spout of Kyogre. I think Hippolyte so far definitely has the Pokemon advantage, but on the return, we're going to be seeing the Groudon come back in and potentially that Venusaur.
Yeah, I think what's been really key for Hippolyte to be able to do the exact play that's come up to here is that really key Throat Chop on the Incineroar for Nick. Because, like, Incineroar is just great at coming in and taking hits and then slow pivoting out so something can safely get in. But as soon as that's taken away, and you're able to then get your Kyogre in a certain position, and especially when Groudon had already switched in, it was so crucial. So Incineroar wasn't able to come back in and do anything. Kyogre just was able to sit there, Incineroar was already there, and you could just fire off a water move really nicely, and he capitalized off it.
Yeah, and I think he did it very well because Incineroar is #1 usage Pokemon. It makes a lot of sense because it acts as such a very good multi-role Pokemon. You've got the damage sponge effect that it just kind of absorbs damage for its partners to be able to safely come in. So we're going to be seeing the Thunder Wave come out from that Thunderous there into the Venusaur slot, which does half its speed. And the Groudon from Nick's side actually going for the setup play there, getting the Sword Stance, now at +2 attack, and unfortunately the Venusaur is fully paralyzed, which means if it was trying to go for a cheeky Sleep Powder there, it was unable to do so.
Yeah, I think so. However, Sleep Powder is only 75% accurate, so even if you got through the paralysis, there's no guarantee you were going to hit it then as well. But Nick might have a few more opportunities to do so, because we've seen Eerie Impulse and a Thunder Wave and a Thunderbolt on Thunderous. No taunt so far, and there wasn't any taunt on the previous Kyogre Zacian team that we saw from Haricot. So Venusaur looks like it may be able to get another one of those off, and especially now it's in the sun, it could probably still outspeed this Incineroar.
Yeah, as we're actually going to be seeing the Groudon up to go for the protect it. So it just wants to position itself a bit more better. But unfortunately, Hippolyte went for that fake out into the Venusaur slot, prioritizing that one with the Thunderbolt as well, as that may have just been a very good read there, because the Groudon wasn't able to get anything accomplished there at all. It wasn't even focused on.
Yeah, that's a pretty, very safe protect, maybe a little bit too safe. There was definitely an opportunity there to get off a lot of damage. I think that's probably the reason why Hippolyte didn't want to switch into his Kyogre, because it could have taken a huge amount of damage from the Precipice Blades that turn. So definitely a missed opportunity here. However, it doesn't enable Nick this time, even though Kyogre isn't on the field, to securely KO a knockout on something, say the Thunderous, with a rock move, and then put the Incineroar to sleep, stop it pivoting, and delay the fact that Kyogre wants to come in. But Nick now going straight on the offensive here, going for that Dynamax after a Swords Dance boost. So it is definitely going to be very strong here. And actually, now Kyogre is not on the field, it has the opportunity to get up these Max Quake boosts to be able to further take subsequent water moves from Kyogre.
Exactly. It's going to be seeing the Thunderbolt going into the Venusaur, being able to chip it further down as much as it can, of course. Max Quake, which shows the reveal of the Sugar Berry on the Incineroar for Hippolyte's side. I don't think it is going to be enough to allow it to survive, but let's find out. It's definitely not. As essentially +2 Groudon, Max Quake is really something you do not want to be going up against, if especially your Pokemon are super effectively weak to him. So I think what this sort of setup is from Nick's side is the fact that you're going to be able to go ahead and get your Max Quake boost, your special defensive boost going. Hopefully, actually, we'll see if the Thunderous can survive. It survives on 2
health.
Well, that's quite close. But the point is, I think the Kyogre coming in as well, you want to be able to survive with that special defensive boost and maybe try to threaten the Kyogre in return on the subsequent turn.
Yeah, but the thing we haven't seen yet is Hippolyte's 4th Pokemon, which is very likely this Zacian, and there's no Incineroar left on Nick's end to be able to weaken its damage output, and here it comes. So Venusaur being paralyzed is not a good thing for Nick, because this Zacian is free to target whatever it likes. However, we haven't seen the full moveset on Venusaur. We have seen a Sludge Bomb, so there's probably a low chance that there's a Protect on there, but we have seen the Swords Dance on Groudon, so we know that there is an option to max guard here. And Thunderous isn't doing a lot of damage into Venusaur either, but instead of picking a target, Hippolyte actually goes for the Protect, potentially scouting out for one on Nick's end.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to be seeing the Thunderbolt further chipping away Venusaur's HP, but not being quite enough. I think Groudon, in this situation, goes for the Max Quake naturally into the Zacian. It is going to deal so much damage through that Protect, believe it or not, thanks to that +2 attack, critical hit. Max Quake, my lord, that is not what you want to see, your Hippolyte. But in this same aspect as well, we actually see the Venusaur being fully paralyzed. Hippolyte is going to be very free to bring in the Kyogre right now, so hoping to be able to pick up the reverse sweep.
I think so. And Kyogre, with probably being naturally faster as well, will be able to just Dynamax, go straight on the offensive, just start firing at water moves, already boosted by the water this time, because Nick does not have the Sun up at all, and it's looking like you could just Zacian, Behemoth Blade, say, into Groudon, and then a Hailstorm into Venusaur. You could go Behemoth Blade into Venusaur, maybe a Max Geyser into Groudon, because Groudon's probably not going to go down to any of those individual attacks, but I think as long as you split your damage, you're not at risk of taking a sleep, basically, from Venusaur.
I don't even think you even need to utilize Dynamax, if I'm honest, because what if you just go ahead and you click Water Spout and Behemoth Blade into Groudon? I think that has a very high potential of even picking up the KO, and at least you guarantee and mark off the Venusaur there, but Hippolyte's not going to listen to me. Hippolyte's going to go ahead and do his thing, and go for the Dynamax with the Kyogre.
Hippolyte big whales. So Kyogre is going huge here. This is a Dynamax format, and that is what we're going to do. So, and I'm not going to hear the rest of it. So Zacian goes for that huge Behemoth Blade and slices into Venusaur, taking it down. And I'm very interested to see how much water damage this Groudon's going to take here, because it's going to be a lot. And I would guess it survives, but maybe not with a lot. Let's see how much this does. Groudon taking that Max Geyser right to the chest. It's going down to 162 HP, so it's definitely in range of another one. And there is the Citrus Berry revealed there, so that's going to be quite key in further games to be able to keep it a little bit more alive, especially after setting up those Swords Dances. So Max Quake +2 into the Kyogre is a 2-shot, but unfortunately the Kyogre at the moment has been shown to be faster, and unless it's a speed tie, it's definitely going to be able to get another shot off, and even then the Zacian's there too. Yeah. But as we can see, Dynamax does finish on Groudon's end.
what I do like from Hippolyte's play is he's been trying to work to an end game scenario where he's able to completely nullify Nick's Groudon Dynamax in order to halve the HP gain from Dynamax naturally form. But it was a bit risky. I think there were multiple times where he needed to be a bit cautious about not giving Nick too much space. But he did do well. He did accomplish his win condition to this point where he's able to finish off the game essentially, but it came a bit closer than what you would have originally expected, going from 4 to advantage immediately within the first 2 turns.
Yeah, it's a huge advantage. I think Hippolyte is definitely prepared for this matchup that has come because I think Calyrex Shadow and Groudon is something that's got a little bit more common over the last week or so, and especially having looked at regionals last week. So that if anything, you're going to practice that matchup. So congrats to Hippolyte for taking that game 1. But game 2 now, we've previously seen the opponents of this rain team that Hippolyte's running, maybe leading Charizard Venusaur. So that could be another option that Nick could go for at this time. Instead of leading that Calyrex Shadow, which just immediately got Thunder Waved and kind of became a little bit useless. I mean, yes, it got fully paralyzed, but maybe if you lead that lead instead, you offer a lot of offense and kind of creates a bit more mind games there as to if Ground's suddenly coming in, maybe it isn't. Are you going to get put to sleep? There's a lot that can happen.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make because you kind of have to force your opponent's hand when, especially they have such a offensive team that you just potentially run through yours, and you've got to be able to force those mind games. And I think it's a really good shout. You have the potential chance of being able to switch in the Groudon and go ahead and just choose which Dynamax you want to go for. Do you want to prioritize Gmax Vine Lash, go for the residual damage over time, have the boosted double speed, or just go for raw damage and go for the Gmax Wildfire residual damage, but then it's a Charizard, and you could just go ahead and get some max airstreams going and outspeed your opponent regardless of weather conditions.
Exactly. So, you've got a lot of options on Nick's end. So I wouldn't be surprised if like we have a very different game 2 going in this time. On Hippolyte's end, I can imagine him sticking with the same because it kind of worked. It's a really nice defensive lead. You take hits really well from everything. You can just spread paralysis, and if you're getting a Thunder Wave on something in turn 1, then chances are you're going to get a full paralysis at some point. Because the longer a Pokemon spends being that and taking more turns, the more you're going to benefit from it. So I'm not too surprised on that. And having the faster Incineroar as well was really key to be able to get that Throat Chop in. So Nick's going to have to be a little bit more careful about where and when he clicks Parting Shot in front of an opposing Incineroar.
Yeah, 100%. And I think he'll have to try to take that piece of information going into this game too, just to be able to better position his board state, as he is going to be bringing the Incineroar and Groudon on his side as a lead, whilst over on Hippolyte's side, we're going to be seeing that Thundurus and Incineroar.
Yep, so a little bit of a switch up on Nick's end. It's the Groudon lead this time, and I quite like this actually, because even though you get an instant Intimidate from Hippolyte, you do have that Sword Stance option still, so you can still boost up in front of this. And Hippolyte at the moment hasn't shown anything that can really hit into this Groudon yet. We've seen Thunderbolt, Eerie Impulse, Thunder Wave, so Groudon's looking pretty safe at the moment. And the Incineroar on Nick's end as well still has the option of faking out the Thundurus in case it was a threat for some reason. Maybe has a Taunt to stop the Sword Stance. So Groudon is in a nice position. But Hippolyte does have the option now of potentially Parting Shotting into a Kyogre and winning a Weather War.
Well, exactly that, and I think that's the eternal battle between Groudons and Kyogres, right? Who is going to get their weather set up in order to afflict or resist as much damage as possible? So we're going to be seeing Hippolyte's Incineroar in previous Game 1 fashion go first, or actually, I want to fake out, but no, fake out from the Incineroar slot. We actually see a Grass Knot going straight into the Groudon. Wow, 2-hit KO and actually proccing that Citrus Berry, being able to recover just a bit above half of its HP, goes for the Stone Edge, and is able to deal the exact same scenario where it's able to just drop it right beneath half its HP's worth, and yet a second Citrus Berry reveal.
Yes. So, unfortunately this time though, there is no Calyrex Shadow on the field to stop that Citrus Berry being eaten, so that Stone Edge being a 2-hit KO is now a 3-hit KO. And I think Nick maybe didn't expect the Grass Knot there because that did a huge chunk of damage. And if Groudon is your Dynamax target, that's a lot of hit points that you are not spending being able to be big. So Groudon does switch out here in favor of the Venusaur, which is definitely a big target for a Thunder Wave or an Eerie Impulse, but it looks like Hippolyte was trying to get the read there, goes to the Thunder Wave and Incineroar instead, but the Throat Chop will also stop it from going for any parting shots.
Oh, but it's not going to. It decides instead to go for the focus on the Thunderous Flare Blitz. Oh, not quite enough to pick up the KO, as it does survive on 32 hit points. So Hippolyte there trying to go for the reads. He knows that he's forcing Nick's hand with regards to these switches, so he's just trying to see if he could essentially catch him on the switch and be able to capitalize completely off of it and put himself in a further better position.
Yeah, and Nick now doesn't have the option for parting shot on his Incineroar for the next 2 turns again because of that opposing Throat Chop. So if he wants to switch his Incineroar out and to rotate it back in again, he has to manually switch, and that leaves it open from being Thunder Wave from a Thunderous or being Flare Blitz from an Incineroar. So it is a bit risky now, and especially now Venusaur is on the field, it definitely doesn't want to take an Eerie Impulse and go for the Dynamax because that would it'd just be so weak after that, or Thunder Wave and take all that speed droppage, and then Zashi just comes in and blows it up. So, but Calyrex Shadow is the switch in this time, so let's see how Hippolyte responds.
As we're actually going to be seeing Nick opting to go for the G-Max Venusaur. I think Nick is confident now that at least he's got the Groudon in the back. He will be able to manually switch it, and if he wants to, for whatever reason, understandable, outspeed Hippolyte's Pokemon, completely capitalize off that Chlorophyll ability that, of course, Venusaur is known to be using. So being able to Dynamax in this scenario is quite interesting, as you are still subject, as quite literally we're seeing it right now, to that Thunder Wave, but it's not going to stop the Venusaur. Venusaur is able to go ahead, unleash the G-Max Vine Lash, pick up that Thunderous as a KO. Of course, it was on a measly 32 hit points, so it's more than enough even if it does resist, but more importantly, it's able to go ahead and get residual damage, but my lord, it's going to have to pay the price.
It is. So, and we got a weakness policy activation here. So the Venusaur, even though it is paralyzed, is now looking very strong right now. So I kind of like what Nick's done here. Like, he's got his Calyrex in now, and the Thunderous is gone. So it can't be, its damage can't be reduced by any impulse. Its speed can't be reduced. So if Zacian comes in here from Hippolyte, and Calyrex Shadow has the Will-O-Wisp that they do often carry, it might be able to help Venusaur live the Behemoth Blade, so Venusaur can then get another attack off, which is going to be a very big one thanks to this weakness policy.
Yeah, and it kind of forces this scenario where you're able to unleash so much damage, but you kind of held back from that Thunder Wave because you're no longer going to be able to outspeed, let's say, the Zacian that's come out from Hippolyte's side, even with the weather set up, and you're subject to that Behemoth Blade that you got to really be careful of. But then again, you do have Calyrex on the field. If it does have access to Will-O-Wisp, it could be a way to reduce the damage output of the Zacian by half, maybe allow your Venusaur to survive and try to retaliate, go for the pick-up revenge KO onto it.
Yeah, so Venusaur could go for the Max Quake, say, into the Incineroar here, get a special defense boost, probably pick up a KO, and if Kyogre comes in, it's taking a lot of damage. So here we do see the Will-O-Wisp into the Zacian, it does connect, so let's see what Zacian kind of responds with here. But if it is like a double-up save into the Venusaur, that's probably going to be a KO, but Behemoth Blade is the choice of move, so normally, I think with like a really frail Venusaur, this probably one-shots, but thanks to that Will-O-Wisp, it is just about to survive. But the full paralysis now, because if that was a Quake into Zacian, it's down. So a really unfortunate full paralysis there, but that's what happens with Thunder Wave.
That's why Thunder Wave's good. That's why it's used, at least. And it makes a lot of sense because it creates win condition scenarios that you're not necessarily building up and planning for. You're just saying, okay, I know at least I've got the speed advantage, speed control, and it's quite a nice thing if I could maybe get a Thunder Wave or two full paralysis sort of situation going. And that's essentially what happened here, because I think that really would have put pressure on Hippolyte and forced the Kyogre to come in whilst the Groudon could still be available for use in the back. So that is quite important key point there in this game too.
Yeah, so Calyrex Shadow going for the Protect, maybe trying to catch a Zacian hit into that slot, which it unfortunately doesn't. So I think Nick was trying to maybe find a little way out there, try and get a shot off from his Venusaur, but unfortunately Hippolyte does target down the correct slot and gets that huge KO, which makes sense because your cover is the only thing that can deal with the Incineroar at this point is that Venusaur with, like, say, a Max Quake. So, and now Incineroar can safely go for that attack into the Calyrex Shadow, which has now protected, but Hippolyte still has his Dynamax option left.
Yeah, and I think at this point, if you're Hippolyte, you know that you're well aware of the amount of resource availability that you still have on your side of the field. Sure, the Zacian is burnt, but the Calyrex is at low enough HP that it's just going to be subject to any sort of hit, picking up a KO. That isn't, of course, a normal or fighting type move, but regardless, I think forcing Nick's situation where he's got the Incineroar, he's got the Groudon, he has to bring in the Incineroar so he can preserve that weather situation for the Kyogre. It's not over yet at all. I think it just falls down to how you're going to be able to better position yourself. And the Zacian, it's not subject. It might be close to range of an Astral Barrage, but I don't think it's quite there, David.
Yeah, potentially not. And we can have a look at the HP stats as well from our perspective, thanks to spectator mode. So we can see if this is maybe a bulky Zacian or not, and it's probably got a little bit in there. So it might be able to take an Astral Barrage, because as soon as you can make an Astral Barrage from a 2-hit knockout into a 3-hit knockout, that makes it so much better going to Calyrex, because then you suddenly win a 1v1 situation. So having that bulk and Zacian can be really useful. So I think Nick's going to need a lot of damage output, and thanks to his Incineroar just coming in, he is able to fake out the Incineroar and potentially put it in the range of this Astral Barrage.
It might just be. Let's see if it picked up the KO on the Zacian as well. Oh, it survives on 12 hit points, but it may go down to this burn as well. So we're just going to have to try to see and find out what the situation is going to be. The Incineroar is out for the count. We see the +1 special attack boost thanks to that dual ability, the Grim Neigh there, acting as a sort of a Moxie boost situation there. But we're going to be seeing the Zacian does target down the Calyrex, wants to make sure that it picks up the KO there. And all of a sudden, we're in a scenario where actually the Gmax Divine Lash residual damage is more than enough, picks up that Zacian, but we've got the Kyogre in the back, David. And I think that is what Hippolyte has been planning for this whole game.
Absolutely. And although when the Kyogre does come in, and it's the last Pokemon on Hippolyte's end, we've seen that it's faster, so Groudon is going to be getting its sun up here. However, I play obviously Dynamax, so it's able to go hugely big and get its weather up exactly when it wants to. And Groudon is able to get some Precipice Blades off. Maybe it's going to try and it's a tough ask for Nick, to be honest. Like, although he may have Protect on the ground, so maybe if he can catch a move from there, get something from the Incineroar off, live a hit, maybe there's something to carve out. But Kyogre's pretty strong Pokemon.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I think that's why it's one of the most used Pokemon, because it is so powerful. And I do like that call out as well, David. I think Nick may be forced in a scenario where maybe a Max Guard, if he has it available, could be a way out in order to better position himself and waste at least one of Kyogre's max turns. Maybe go for the parting shot, but no apologies. There wasn't no Protect. At least from the Groudon, we go for the Max Geyser, picks up the KO onto the Incineroar slot, does set up the rain. And this Groudon, I don't think is going to be able to finish this off, because maybe it feels +4. Single target.
They haven't introduced like super critical hits, have they yet? No, I don't think so. So maybe next gen, but at the moment it looks like I think Hippolyte is going to take this set 2-0. And here's that final Max Geyser in the rain of probably a water spout damage, huge amount of base power. Groudon is getting KO'd and is out of here. And Hippolyte takes the game 2-0 and is now 6-0 going into Bremen Regionals.
What a phenomenal record to be on, knowing that you only have a couple of more rounds left and you have gone so far undefeated. This is very, very positive for Hippolyte. I think he's definitely one of those players that has been on a consistent amount of top level form, and he just keeps on proving it. And I think he's definitely going to be trying to push for top cut if he isn't already guaranteed it.
I think so.